Is Elden Ring the Tarnished Edition for Nintendo Switch 2 delayed? That is the question I want to explore and unpack with you all in today's video, because there is now some reason to be concerned about this supposed 2025 release maybe not hitting the 2025 mark, because of course in the Switch 2 generation so far, we have had a number of different major marquee third-party games both see success and hit their release targets and actually run very good at launch. And we've had a handful of recent announcements, such as the one we covered yesterday, like Borderlands 4 being delayed indefinitely on the Switch 2 version, and it was previously targeting an early October launch. We now don't have any kind of release date or target to look forward to with that game, and Gearbox specifically said that it's an optimization issue. They have to take more time to get the game running up to an acceptable standard on the Switch 2, and they have more things to polish. They also want to implement some features like cross-save that might now be there at launch, and they wouldn't have been otherwise. But you get the idea. Elden Ring is a game that showed up at the April Nintendo Switch 2 hardware-focused direct and had just that 2025 title card at the end of it, letting us know that it was coming out this year. But many, including myself, would have expected some kind of updated release timeline for the game no later than something like the most recent September Nintendo Direct that we saw take place. It was an hour-long plus presentation. Granted, it also had Mario's 40th anniversary celebration baked into it, but we had a whole host of different third-party game announcements and updates, and Elden Ring was mysteriously missing. We even got the official launch date for Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, which is coming out in January of 2026. And Elden Ring, a game that's titled for 2025, has gotten no release timeline update. That is in addition to seeing some of the talk out of Gamescom 2025 and PAX West, where you saw headlines like this: Elden Ring Tarnished Edition on Switch 2 suffers from performance issues in early hands-on. Not really the kind of you died fans expected. You had IGN says Elden Ring on Nintendo Switch 2 is a disaster in handheld mode. And listen, I actually don't agree with those type of headlines. Seeing some of the early performance footage firsthand, and shout out to the creators that we will use for the B-roll. I will have their full in-depth uncut look at all of the footage for Elden Ring in the description down below, so you can go check out their content firsthand. But we saw some of these headlines and were really fearful that the game might drop to like 10 or 15 frames per second when running on the Nintendo Switch 2. And even in handheld mode, which was the big one that had a lot of mystery around it for a while, because the story was with that is that you could play Elden Ring in docked play and actually record gameplay footage at Gamescom 2025, but handheld mode, nobody was allowed to record. PAX West, that kind of changed up, and we saw some more footage come out of that event in handheld play. But you had these mysterious curtains that were kind of being covered up on the game's performance, and you had some of this fear online that you really just had unacceptable frame dips. Now, upon further and closer inspection of the footage myself, I'm not too worried about the game's performance, but I can see noticeably some hiccups, some stutters. If you're used to playing this thing on a PS5 or Xbox Series X, you are going to have a noticeable decrease in frame rate, as those consoles do run the game at a pretty solid 60 FPS. However, if you're familiar with the base PS4 version of these games or the Xbox One, even something like a Steam Deck, yes, you do notice it struggled to sometimes maintain a consistent 30 FPS when chaotic things happen on screen. And that's kind of what I think out of the footage we are looking at here, although we are still just looking at footage that is recorded off of a lot of times smartphones or even good high quality cameras, but they're going through YouTube compression and getting downloaded, re-uploaded. And the idea behind really being able to tell just how solid this game's potential performance is looking so far can be really hard to identify. And I do believe some of the reports of people that did say they just noticed a lot of frame stutters and they noticed some hiccups when they were going through the game, and especially calling out handheld mode even more than docked, which of course is one of the big selling points around this game coming to Switch 2 to begin with, because you want to have this experience playable whether you are on the go or docked at a TV. And so there is a real worry now in my mind that we might be looking at a delay for this game because the event for it to show up with some kind of launch window or even exact launch date was the September Nintendo Direct. That doesn't have to happen, but if you just look at how this game's marketing has been aligned with Nintendo so far, as it being a big focal point for Nintendo's third-party games lineup at the April Nintendo Switch 2 hardware-focused Direct, you'd think that Nintendo would be involved with also communicating the exact launch date of the game, and I think it would have been planned for something like a September Direct, unless if FromSoft and the team porting this was just realistically looking at the game's performance, looking at some of the feedback from the hands-on experiences online, and really decided that this game needs a little bit more optimization for Switch 2 before they're ready to bring it to market. Now, the hope for me personally, and the optimistic part of my brain, wants to actually believe that we could still see a very last minute date communicated, but it may be something like a December time slot. And we are talking first or second week of December, most likely, maybe as late as the third week, but you really start to get close to actual Christmas time at that point. And I can see FromSoft maybe just needing to kind of pull back from committing to a hard date right now, knowing they need more time to optimize the game, and they decide and communicate to Nintendo, hey, we want to slap a actual launch date on this thing a little bit more last minute than we were planning on. Give us through the rest of 2025 to communicate this date, and maybe by mid-October, we're going to get some kind of surprise update announcement that in a couple months it's out. The option B is that they take until mid-October, we get a little update, but it's about this game being pushed to early 2026, February or March potentially. I think it is a realistic possibility that's on the table, considering we haven't had any communication around the release date of this game. We're getting so close to holiday season. There's no really upcoming foreseeable big gaming events in the pipeline anymore. Tokyo Game Show is technically running today at the time of you seeing this video through the weekend, so there is some world where we get an update there, but it's not really what I'm expecting. I hope I'm wrong about that. It is always, of course, in the realm of possibility that Nintendo holds a mid or late October Nintendo Switch 2 partner direct, like we saw them do in late July for the Switch 2. Because there are so many third-party games, they may want to do a separate presentation for that, but it's also not guaranteed and not something that, even if you look at their track record and pattern, is typical of Nintendo to do very late year for game announcements, whether it be partner or first party. That September Direct is normally the send-off for the year with big new game announcements, at least in recent memory. As somebody who will be continuing to monitor all the details closer of Elden Ring Tarnished Edition and when we might see the game ultimately release, you might also want to be caught up to speed on some of the new details we've learned about this game. And 2025 or not, this is going to be a ton of content, and in my personal opinion, of course, you got to keep in mind this is coming from a hardcore FromSoft fan at this point in time, I think it's a must-own for your Switch 2 collection, and the amount of content that's going to be on this single release is absolutely incredible, considering that it has Shadow of the Erdtree DLC packed into the base game. The base game main story, not even doing a lot of the side stuff. You're looking at 60 hours easy. You get another 40 easy out of Shadow of the Erdtree, and there's tons more than that if you just want to keep going. Well, we do know of some additional things that are coming to this edition. In fact, they will be kind of a DLC upgrade for other Elden Ring owners on other platforms. You will be able to update your game. We don't know if it's going to be free or paid. Probably free in terms of the amount of content we're seeing added in that is truly brand new for the Switch 2 Tarnished Edition. But you do have here over at the Elden Ring wiki from Extra Life, and you have here Elden Ring Tarnished Edition features exclusive armor sets, new weapons, customization options for Torrent, new classes, and includes the base game with the Shadow of the Erdtree expansion. Gamescom 2025 ran from August 20th to the 24th, 2025, showcasing exciting announcements and news from a ton of games to come in 2025 and the succeeding years to come. One of the booths that was present at the event was the Nintendo booth, where players got a chance to try out Elden Ring Tarnished Edition on Switch 2, showcasing the new classes exclusive to Tarnished Edition. So first up, you have the Heavy Knight. You can see a couple close-up screenshots of the armor on screen. In a Reddit post, a short video can be seen showcasing the Heavy Knight in the character creation and some action and combat during the tutorial part of the game that takes place at the Chapel of Anticipation. The Heavy Knight features a robust black heavy plated armor set and a large curved sword. Observing its design, it reminds us of the classic knight builds in other Souls series, and we can say that this class is meant for players who favor melee combat. The announcement also introduces 2 exclusive features for this edition: 4 new armor sets and 3 customization options for Torrent, the player's spectral seat. The announcement also introduced 2 exclusive features for this edition: 4 new armor sets and 3 customization options for Torrent, the player's spectral steed. The trailer displayed these armor sets as visually distinct from existing designs in addition to new weapons from past titles, while the Torrent customization appeared as an aesthetic modification with no further details provided on their functionality. Now you can then see some of the screenshots in question here, which are actually very high quality, because you can zoom all the way in and still see them very crystal clear. Lucatiel's armor set from Dark Souls 2 is a very cool one that I am excited to see kind of actually show up here as something that was not in Elden Ring, the base game, and is being added in for the Tarnished Edition update. And then we do have just kind of a nice up close look at a couple different melee focused knight armor sets. Now, one thing, if you guys are kind of unfamiliar with starting a character in a FromSoft game, for the most part, you don't have to worry too much about your starting class. You're going to essentially level up all of your stats as time goes on. You really just care, you do care some about the base stats. Like if you're going to go for a mage build, you're not going to want to have super high endurance, strength, and things that play into a melee strength-based character. You're going to want to go more in the intelligence route and start out with some higher stats there. And you want to have armor sets that obviously make sense for your play style. So you're kind of pointing your character in a direction, but almost nobody ends up with their original base armor and really even a significant commitment to the base stats and what levels those are at when you are selecting your characters. So while new classes kind of sound cool on paper, the actual implications of how it's going to impact the game is pretty minimal. Just pick a cool starting class. I like melee builds personally. I always go for Unga Bunga strength style, giant two-handed ultra great sword of some sort, or even going into a dual wield build, but you get to craft that kind of as you go, and just pick an armor set and things that matches your character style, kind of fits the type of build you're going for, and you will be off in the right direction at that point. But performance concerns aside, and a potential delay concern aside, which are valid concerns to have, I am still very much excited and looking forward to the release of Elden Ring, the Tarnished Edition on Nintendo Switch 2. I will be picking it up and reviewing it in depth on the channel with you all, so get subscribed for that. And I am hopeful we get some kind of update or official confirmation of the release date soon, but I would love to hear from you guys, your personal thoughts, opinions, and expectations around the release timing of this game. Do you think that performance issues like we've seen somewhat outlined in gameplay at PAX West and Gamescom 2025 are indeed what is kind of on FromSoft's radar, and they just believe they need more development time for this game, and that's the reason we haven't learned about the release date yet? Do you think it makes kind of a quick turnaround where we get an update in mid-October or something like that, and it is actually still out this year in 2025 in December at some point? Do you think we are pretty much bound for a 2026 release at this point, and there's really no hope for a 2025 release still for this game? I think since it's already out on other platforms, even though retailers will need some heads up for the physical edition, I do still think there's a chance it comes out this year, but I am definitely more concerned about it now the further we go without getting any kind of communication around it. And are you somebody who's played through this on other consoles and you're picking it up for your Switch 2, or will this be your first time diving into the world of Elden Ring, and are you personally very excited to experience that? So make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn your notification bell. And with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.